This is the brand new 2025 R1300GS, but with a bit of a difference. You see, this bike has got their ASA spec, or automated shift assistant. Effectively, this allows you to run the bike as an automatic. And so is this now the thing to have on your GS, or is the regular manual version still the better bike? Well, in this video, we'll take it for a spin to show you how it works in practice, and then at the end, give you my verdict. But before we get underway, a massive thanks to REBELHORN for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. In all of the riding footage, I'm wearing their CUBBY 5 Adventure suit, which packs loads of brilliant features and all for a really impressive price. This suit uses 3 individual layers, so it's perfect for changing weather conditions, with a protective outer that's comprehensive in terms of venting and pockets. Then you've got the waterproof membrane inside, which you can wear over the top to keep the outer suit dry, and also another removable layer in the form of some thermals. For this time of year, it's nice and snug, but then also in the summer months, you can remove those 2 layers and open up the vents. Genuinely, this suit is now one of my go-to bits of riding kit, and it also comes in a wide range of sizes with 4 neatly designed colorways. So look, do check out the links down in the description below to find out more. And once again, a massive thanks to REBELHORN for their support and making videos like this possible. But before we get on the road, I'll give you a little quick refresher for anybody who's not familiar with what exactly ASA is. It's BMW's interpretation of a system that a lot of manufacturers are now offering for 2025, and so you might also hear it referred to as AMT, or automated manual transmission. Basically, what you've got is the same engine as a regular manual bike. This is not particularly different to the 1300 Boxer in the non-ASA version, but the key thing is they've replaced the clutch and the gear shifter with electronic actuators, so they can both be controlled by the bike's electronics. So look, there's no actual clutch lever on this bike, it just rides as a twist and go. And although there is a gear shifter down by your left foot, that's actually completely electronic and has no mechanical connection to the gearbox. So look, let's start with the basics of how to start this bike up and get it on the move, because of course it does vary a little bit from how you do that on a manual bike. This one's keyless, so you've got to switch it on with the button over here, and you've got to kick up the kickstand as well. Now you can see it's in neutral, but if I press down on the shifter peg, you can put it into P or parking, and that's what you'd leave it in to stop it rolling away. Now, an interesting side benefit of some of these AMT or ASA bikes is that you can't actually push them away. You can't put it into neutral and steal it by pushing it with another bike unless you've got the key, because this is done electronically, so you need to switch it on, and even in this case fire it up when it's switched on in order to get it back into neutral. So look, to start it, pull the front brake lever and hit the starter. And you might have heard just before it started, the electronic actuator kicked it into neutral for me, and yeah, then it just fires up. Then all you need to do is press down on the shifter peg into first, and you can see it's in first gear, manual, and then it's just a case of giving it a bit of the old twist and go. So apply a bit of throttle and the bike starts to move off gently. Having ridden Yamaha's AMT recently as well, one of the things I've got to say that I think BMW have got right is the smoothness of pulling away without actually having a manual clutch. With the MT-09 that I was riding a couple of weeks back, it wasn't particularly bad, but there was a bit of a noticeable jolt as you applied a little bit of throttle to get the bike to move away. Now, whether it's the throttle map or the way that the clutch works, or the fact that this is a heavier, softer bike that's not going to be as susceptible to little bits of jerkiness, there's just something about this bike that feels a touch more controlled, and so this is a massive tick for the BMW ASA system. Now look, once you're on the move, you just knock through the gears with the shifter as you would with a regular bike, maybe with a quick shifter where you didn't need to dip the clutch. And the only difference you'll notice really is just how much smoother it is, regardless of what level of revs you're riding at, because sometimes quick shifters can be a bit clunky in the low revs. And then also the fact that there's not really much feedback or tension in the foot shifter because it's purely electronic, so it does feel a little bit fake, I guess. But still, it does the job and it really is quite impressive, and the shifts are very smooth. Where things start to get really quite interesting though is with this button on the left-hand switchgear, or just next to it, that says D or M, and that's drive or manual. And press this, close the throttle, and it'll switch over to D and show you which gear you're in with the little number next to it there. Immediately you'll feel it start to knock through the gears a little quicker, I would say, than what you would personally in manual. It really does short shift and try and get to 6th gear as quickly as possible, and so even doing 40 here, it's decided to go into 6th, down to 39 to 5th, but generally I'd say it is riding a gear or two higher than personally I'd probably like. Thing is though, that was in the road mode, which is a little less aggressive and just built for all-round use. And you will notice that if you shift into dynamic with the mode button on the right-hand switchgear here, it does hang on to the gears a bit more. I guess that's to, you know, access those peak power zones in the rev range. But it does feel a little better to me as well in terms of which gear I'd like to be in auto.
Now this one might seem like a bit of a philosophical point, but I really like the fact that this bike defaults to manual as opposed to going into automatic when you switch it on. With other systems like Honda's DCT, I think there's the kind of idea that you mainly ride it in auto, and the manual's there if you want to switch to it for things like low speed maneuvers, or maybe if you're riding in a slightly more sporty manner. But thing is, because that automatic mode isn't exactly perfect, I actually find with this bike and the AMT system on the Yamahas and the Honda DCT as well, that manual is the more pleasant riding experience, and so it's the one that I'll use the majority of the time. And I'm also see automatic as an extra tool that you might use if you just want a bit more comfort for cruising along or that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's because of any technical limitations or the way the electronics work, but purely from an experience of using a bike with ASA, I think it makes sense to put manual first.
You see, the thing with automatic is it's just never quite going to read your mind and pick the gear for the thing that's coming down the road. It can't see there's a corner coming where you might just hold on to a gear and not shift up. It just does whatever it thinks is right in that exact moment. So look, not really a criticism of this particular bike. It happens with the YAMT on the Yamaha. It happens with DCT as well. It just shifts sometimes when you don't want it to, and that can be a little unsettling or a bit annoying. I do think though that this bike, it feels like it's tied into the IMU because it rarely shifts when the bike is banked over. And I think that's similar to Honda's DCT. It was one of the things I noticed on the Yamaha that it didn't have that. It doesn't tie into the IMU, which measures the lean angle of the bike. And so sometimes if you were going around a little roundabout and you were kind of slowing down as you were doing so, it would occasionally pop it down a gear, which really does feel unsettling. All in all, automatic isn't necessarily bad. It's just not as good as riding it in manual.
Now, like I mentioned earlier, one of the key differences with this system versus some of the others on the market is the fact that you still get a foot shifter as opposed to doing the manual gears with the buttons on the switch gear. And I think I actually prefer it because although there is some satisfaction and novelty to using the buttons on the switch gear, well, it does mean that your left hand becomes quite busy because you've got other stuff to control with it, like the indicators, the menus, and some of the settings and cruise control. So in a way, it makes sense to use your foot because it kind of frees your hand up to do the other stuff. And also for anyone moving over to this bike from a regular manual transmission, well, I guess it's just going to feel that bit more intuitive because you've got that kind of muscle memory. There's something that just feels right when you're powering out of a corner with the throttle open about just shifting up with your foot.
I should add that I'm riding in very much like a suburban setting here because I feel like it's where I'm going to get the most stops and starts and shifts up and down the box. But I did also try it out on a press event last week in Wales when I was trying out the new GS Adventure as well, and so that gave me a chance to stretch its legs a bit and see what it's like when you're riding quicker. And I think a lot of these observations are pretty much the same. And then also for low speed riding, you don't have the clutch to finesse your maneuvers, so you have to really think about how you're going to ride it, especially if it's loaded up with a passenger and luggage. I'd say much like trying to get the best out of Honda's DCT system, you're best off in manual so it doesn't make any unexpected shifts, and also in one of the less aggressive throttle maps so you've got a bit more control. Then if you just give it a bit of constant throttle, instead of dipping the clutch or slipping the clutch,
you can just use a little bit of rear brake to slow the bike or let off to speed up. And that's the best way to go about it in my experience. But really, it depends if you're comfortable riding like that. And also, there still probably will be occasions where you think that would have been easier if I'd had a clutch. Overall though, I think you've got to say that it is pretty impressive, and I think it's going to surprise a few people if they bother to take it out for a demo. Certainly this system has some strengths versus the Yamaha that I've tried so far, and while you don't get the same sort of seamless shifts that you get with Honda's dual clutch transmission, well, it is still pretty close, and it's not as expensive, not as complicated, and not as heavy. So I think it's fair to say that BMW's interpretation of an automatic bike is up to scratch and right up there with some of the competition, and also DCT's success over the past few years has demonstrated that there is a market for it. In fact, Honda claimed that the bikes that are available with DCT sell more units with it than without. As for whether I'd personally spec it up though, well, I haven't been that keen on the automatic mode so far, and so I think I'll be running it in manual. And in that case, if you've got a quick shifter on a manual bike, it does give you a very similar experience when you're on the move, and it just comes down to whether you want to be able to pull away without using the clutch, and also how you like to ride when it comes to low speed maneuvers. I do kind of wish they'd fitted a mechanical clutch to override the ASA, which is exactly what you get on Honda's e-clutch system on some of their more affordable bikes. Then you'd have the option of a bit more clutch control at lower speeds, but also to be able to go fully automatic for those times when you want to just take it a little bit easy. Still, I think there's plenty of food for thought for anyone considering a GS anytime soon, and so I'd love to know what you make of it down in the comments below. Would you spec it up, or do you think you'd still go for the manual bike? Also, I recently reviewed the GS Adventure, which is available with ASA for 2025 as well, so do check out that review. I'll put it on the screen now in case you haven't seen it already. And also do hit subscribe if you want to see more of the latest motorcycle reviews like this right here on MOTOBOB. As always, a massive thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.